Here we go. Stand by. 3, 2, 1, action.
Assume nothing.
Brash, bald-faced blasphemy.
Question everything.
I find it extremely hard to imagine.
Open your eyes.
It is quite all right to be an atheist.
The fastest growing group of people in the country has been measured as being those who have no belief or who are atheists.
You don't have to be apologetic or quiet about it.
Challenge the opposition.
You see religion on 100 fronts losing the argument.
And start thinking. This is The Thinking Atheist Worldwide.
There is so much heathenry in this room tonight. So we're heading toward the holidays. The inevitable war on Christmas will begin. I know you guys are bracing yourself. The declaring of war on Jesus as people decorate their homes with largely pagan symbols. What a beautiful tree. What a beautiful fire. Oh, I love your mistletoe. There's a war on Christmas. There's a war on Jesus. Many people with fundamentalist families often feel like that with the holidays approaching, we're on the cusp of Thanksgiving, Christmas just around the corner, that they're kind of walking into the lion's den, right? I mean, you don't have to raise your hand, but how many of you are getting ready to walk into the lion's den? Okay, so this is like a self-help meeting then, all of us together. But here today, you can look around to the people sitting next to you, and you can look around demographically throughout the United States and see the evidence. The statistics continue to come in. The rise of the nuns, not necessarily atheist, but atheist, agnostic, unaffiliated, non-religious, non-church going. I don't really need it. Religion doesn't really speak to me. It doesn't fulfill that for me. I'm none. I am non-affiliated. That is the single fastest rising demographic in the United States. I think the new Pew research that just came out said that it is, in the religion category, it is now the most influential, or has the highest statistics of people in it. I think it was 21% of people surveyed by Pew was reported in Washington Post, meaning that there are more people now who are voting, or should be voting, who are affiliating as non-believing or non-religious. I don't need it. It's not a thing for me. It's more than Christianity, more than Catholicism. And I've been speaking throughout the day to people who've been ostracized by family and friends. Many people worried that if anyone found out I was here. I've had conventions where people have had to lie about where we went to a marriage conference. It was wonderful. Because if they were to say I went to a convention or an atheist, 300th atheist radio show event, there would be so many consequences for them, and those consequences range from person to person, circumstance to circumstance. But if you look around, you are among friends. You're around people who represent a growing demographic of those who believe that, a secular life is a beautiful life, a woo-free, magic-free, reality-based life. How can you be moral without God? Pretty easy. How can you be happy without God? Really easy. What about all the things that are happening, all the negative things in the world? And I look at them and I say, do you realize that it is the most religious nations in the United States that have the worst in almost every major statistic? Whether it's crime or poverty or war, those types of things, it is the more secular nations that are the ones that are largely happier and more productive and more peaceful. And slowly but surely, the United States of America, in a very difficult time, is seeing the rise of the nuns, the non-religious. I don't need to lie to myself. I don't need to lie to others. I want to continue to ask questions. I want to live in the real world. I want to stop apologizing for not just take it on faith or just trust me as a suitable answer. Damn it, I don't just want to believe, I want to know. You represent that culture shift here in the United States and in some ways around the world. And if for any reason tonight you're feeling alone, you feel ostracized, you feel like nobody gets you, trust me, we get you. And it's my honor that you're part of our 300th show tonight. So thank you for being here. So this is going to be kind of a fast and loose show. I've got all of my special guests for the day. These people are my family. I'm honored to share a table with them. We're going to banter with each other, and we've got a roving microphone, and we're occasionally going to go out to you and find out if you have a comment or question, if you would like to contribute. A very kinetic kind of evening, a very dynamic show tonight. Let me start with you, Shelley. You just moved here to the United States?
Yes, to Los Angeles.
Where were you born?
I was born in Melbourne, Australia.
Say Melbourne for me.
Melbourne.
Melbourne.
No, that one's in Florida, Seth.
Melbourne.
I got such a fright when I was at the airport in Dallas and I saw a direct flight to Melbourne. I was like, oh, didn't realize there was...
Say it again. Melbourne. You don't say the R. Melbourne.
Melbourne, yeah.
You are in Dallas, Texas. Do they say, like, y'all?
I've just been learning about that. So there's y'all and y'alls? Is it like a plural?
No, it's Ewans. There's y'all and Ewans. Do me a favor.
All y'all, that's right. All y'all.
All right, Shelley, I want you to do me I want you to feel it in your bones. You're in Dallas, Texas. I want, hey, y'all, how you doing?
Hey, y'all. How you doing? If I was going to say, are all y'all going to join me out in the bar later? Is that how I say it?
You lost me at bar, but yeah, that was really good.
See, it's not pronounced ba, like you said, it's bar. We pronounce our R's,
Ba.
damn it.
Yeah. And beer? Beer is another one. Can I get a beer?
She doesn't pronounce R's at all.
Like a bumblebee?
Talk to me about how my opening set here, the rise of the nuns. Anybody here at the table want to chime in? We're hot off an election that many of us found hugely disappointing and discouraging. I don't want to spend the whole night on politics because I'd like people to stay for the entire event. But let's talk. We've got a rising secular or non-religious group in the United States, and yet we're seeing also a tremendous surge in a kind of fundamentalism.
Do we know how they voted? Like how the secular population voted?
I haven't seen the statistics on how the secular or nuns voted in the election. Have you guys seen any hard data?
I know that there weren't a lot of people who voted because the biggest problem that I have among the secular people is when they say, it's a broken system, I'm not going to vote because your vote doesn't count, you're contributing to a flawed mechanism. And that's why we get Trump. You want Trump? That's how you get Trump.
Yeah, the Democrats, so the Republican has stayed pretty much flatlined for 2008, 2012, 2016. It's roughly, it's dropped a little bit, which, considering the population has increased, I guess it's more than a little bit of a drop, but it's a roughly flat line. But if you look at what the Democrats got in 2008 when Obama first ran, there were 10 million more Democratic votes in 2008 than there were in 2016. Now, some of those 4 to 6 million or so went to third party, we think. But that still means that there's somewhere between 4 and 6 million who just voted for Obama and would not vote Democrat. And now, I'm not going to get into my third-party bashing, although the time for a protest vote is not when the Supreme Court rests in the balance and there are really only two options.
Amen.
Do your protest votes.
Amen.
Do your protest votes early, and if you want third-party candidates to get in, which I'm all in favor of, and I voted for Bernie in the primary, get them into Congress, get them into the House of Representatives, get them into your local school boards, make them look like a real party, a real option, and then maybe in a presidential election. You don't get to start at the top.
You can send your emails and comments to nowyouvegothimpissed@mattdillahunty.com. Smalley, did you guys deal with this on Dogma Debate? Did you guys handle it a little bit?
Yeah, we did. I went on, I think the day before, 2 days before the show, the election, and pleaded with people specifically for that reason. But the Supreme Court justices are on the line. Let's protest November 9th. That was my plea.
There were quite a few people reported. I mean, I heard something like tens of thousands of people, I think just in Michigan, who voted down ballot but left the president blank. They wouldn't vote for either of them.
Yeah.
I had a friend, a former friend,
Is this
That's
a
how
recent
pissed off he
development?
is.
Yeah.
It's a recent development in your relationship?
A former Facebook friend who was really just, anyway, he wrote in Bernie effing Sanders as a write-in candidate. And I'm like, you do realize there's no such person as Bernie effing Sanders. And so your vote absolutely doesn't count. It doesn't count for Bernie Sanders. It doesn't count for the person you wanted to vote for. It's weird. Although I'm blaming this all on David because I do a TV show and I've never had a guest on to explain why atheists should vote for Trump. I'm sorry.
Wow.
I am in fact only teasing because I love David and I love Bob, even though we.
Now you're going to have to give some context for those who don't know.
Not for many of them. I think most of them know, but yeah. Some may not. Go ahead.
Bob Price, who I generally love and get along with, came on to talk about why he thought atheists should vote for Trump, and it ended up backfiring on him just a little bit because he did the mythicism debate against Bart Ehrman in Milwaukee, and I moderated that. And Bart did this joke at the beginning of like, how many people here are voting for Hillary and how many people are voting for Trump? He did it before the debate started, so Bob's got to sit there and raise his hand, which was kind of a poisoning of the well. And it was sketchy after that. But I don't want to go on about that.
Sarah Hayter, any thoughts on what just happened?
I'm shocked that evangelicals turned in and voted for Trump. I was under the impression that, they cared about these family values and his comments would mean something. But then they went ahead and voted for him anyway. So I'm still in a state of shock. And I don't really know what happened exactly.
Yeah, I'm looking at the evangelicals going, Jesus would be proud.
Well, he's a poor immigrant. He'd probably get the axe. They'd probably move him back across the ocean. So
that sell all your belongings and give the money to the poor. Somehow Trump didn't quite embody that.
It's easier for the camel to go through the eye of the needle than it is for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven.
Just remember the ultimate question: what would Jesus grab?
How much is he?
Good night. Thanks for coming out.
I don't know what he'd grab, but it would be huge.
Shelley, I often see Australia listed among the more secular nations, but I mean, you guys, we were down there doing the Unholy Trinity tour. There's still a lot of religiosity, a lot of tug of war going on in politics. Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. I think we get a better reputation than we deserve, especially on a lot of traditionally secular issues. Like, we don't have marriage equality yet in Australia, as I mentioned earlier today. Recently, they were debating about having a public vote on the issue, but that was voted against, which was a positive thing because they thought that a lot of kind of anti-gay sentiments would be brought up by that whole debate.
You feel like there's an undercurrent? I was talking to Alex Jules, who's in the audience. He is a dear friend, and he and I had sat down on camera for a discussion that you can see on YouTube. But he was talking about, and forgive me if I ruin your analogy, but we were talking about this undercurrent, this sort of seething undercurrent of the more untoward aspects of our free society. Sexism, bigotry, racism, all of these types of things that come into play. And he brought up the analogy, and we laughed about it on camera, but it's actually, if you guys ever seen Ghostbusters 2, and there's Vigo, who comes, and under the streets of New York is this sort of flowing goo, this sort of, I don't know if exactly, whatever it is, he brought this up, and he said, it's always been there. Few people really see it or talk about it, but there's a sort of undercurrent. There seems to be an undercurrent of some very untoward, unpleasant attitudes that are now feeling more free to say, hey, maybe I'm not so ashamed to be a bigot after all, and that's a little scary. So, anybody have a thought on that?
I actually liked Sarah's comment on this from earlier today when you talked about if those on the left begin to no longer be credible, they'll start to take the position of those on the right because it seems to be founded on something that's more credible. If we're not being honest about what's going on, and she was talking with regard to Islam, but you can make the point. I don't need to speak for you.
I think there's a little bit of, there's been an overusage of the term in the sense that people like Ayaan Hirsi Ali are labeled bigots, and now people like Maji Nawaz are labeled, anti-Muslim extremists. And once we start to use this language to describe these sorts of people, then actual white supremacists and actual bigots get to hide behind that label. And they get to say, hey, there's a big tent here of all us bigots, and we all, join us here. And I think that, that's actually kind of a scary thing.
I'm going to get to the audience in just a second, but we were talking about triggers, talking about all of these sort of steps that are being taken to not trigger someone, to not offend in some way, or to not create an atmosphere where someone will feel uncomfortable in a specific way. These are very broad terms. They're used in extremely broad ways. But I want to talk about your opinions. What do you think about the atmosphere that we live in, where there are some universities that are saying we have a safe space, the whole university is now a safe space, this whole university will not be a safe space, so suck it up. What do you guys think? Anybody want to jump in on that can of worms?
I don't think I like the idea of safe spaces. I don't like the idea of any belief being, free to be or to be immune to challenge. You should question everything. And I like, when the president got up recently and said he wanted to make a nation where, we have to respect each other's beliefs. And no, I respect people. I respect your right to have a belief. I respect your right to believe whatever you want to, but I don't respect the belief. And I can't. I mean, if you believe that Columbus discovered Ohio in 1942, I'm not going to respect that belief.
Are you wearing sunglasses because of the white hot light of my countenance, or?
I think it's to hide the number of drinks he's had.
I'm just kidding.
We had a deep discussion about this on my show once, and it's changed my views quite a bit on it. I think what I'm against is the abuse of a safe space. The concept of a safe space makes perfect sense to me. If you want to gather as an LGBT group to talk about your struggles and your life and the things that you've dealt with, without having an anti-gay religious group show up and scream things at you while you're talking, I support that. If the safe space turns into don't question me about my concepts, I'm going to spew hate speech, I find that as an abuse of the safe space. So I think we really need to define the terms before I can raise my hand and say I'm for or against.
Yeah, what does it mean? How does it actually exist on campuses? Is there anyone there?
See, that's what bothers me. I have friends who seem to address this in completely different terms. So for example, I'm in favor of having a safe space at a university or wherever you want. I think by and large, some of them already exist. We just are starting to label them because most campuses have places where you can table and other places where you can't. So as long as you identify those, it shouldn't be difficult to navigate the quad to find where you're going without having to find a bunch of hate speech. We've talked about content warnings, trigger warnings, whatever you want to call them. I'm in favor of them. There's a content warning before every episode of Game of Thrones. And the ones that say strong sexual content, those are the ones I want to watch the most. The problem here is that people get it in their head that there are these weak people who just need to grow up, and if we give them warnings, then they'll hide themselves away and never face reality. And we definitely shouldn't be doing that on campuses, let alone at all. All of that is crap. There are real people. I don't give a shit about offending anybody. Can I say that? Sorry.
You can say whatever you want.
Well, I don't know what the language policy is on this show, but I don't care about being offending people because you don't have a right to not be offended. But I do care in an empathetic sense about people who are struggling with things. And there are real people who are in fact triggered, who are suffering from some sort of psychological trauma or post-traumatic stress. And if we're not going to actually give a damn about them as people, then I don't want anything to do with us. Now, there was an article that went around that talked about, hey, we know from cognitive behavioral therapy that exposure to these things is what makes you get better. Great. That article's awesome. And you know what conclusion they reached? We don't need content warnings. That's the wrong conclusion because cognitive behavioral therapy only works in the state of mindfulness. If somebody's terrified of spiders and you throw spiders at them, you're not helping them, you are hurting them. If instead you say, here's a picture of a spider, look at it when you're ready. Here's a box with a spider, look at it when you're ready. Letting them know. Putting a content warning on something allows somebody to say, I'm ready to deal with this now, or I'm not ready to deal with this now. And yes, they get to say, I'm not ready to deal with it ever. Because guess what? You're not their therapist. And people are paying to go to universities, and shouldn't be paying to get abused, and they shouldn't have professors saying, you come here to be challenged, and if you can't handle it, grow up. No, I come here for an education, and if what you define as challenging me prevents me from getting an education, why the fuck should I pay you?
I gotta say that it's kind of embarrassing when people introduce me based on my intelligence, and then I sit next to him.
So they're understating you, I guess.
Oh.
Let's see what our listeners have to say with our roving microphone. I've got one in the back. My area of focus is kind of weird back there. Okay, hit it.
Thank you all for coming.
Speak up for me.
Can you hear me now? All right. Thank you all for coming. And I've realized that a lot of you have gotten the question of, what can I do to help? And the thing that I've realized is a lot of us don't really know what the rewards of that are. So those of you who are at the epicenter of all this stuff, can you delineate what kind of increases you see? So for instance, like with Dave, what kind of listenership have you seen increase? Or Sarah Hayter, what kind of activism have you seen increase or decrease?
Yeah, I can say that there's been a dramatic increase for me, just exponentially, as far as contact from listeners, the number of downloads per episode, that type of thing has skyrocketed. So I know people care, and like Seth was saying when we started, a lot of them just care privately, and they'll say, thank you so much for doing your show. Thank you so much for what you're doing. Sometimes I take what you say on your show and I bring it up at family gatherings, things like that. And I'm like, oh yeah, you want to come on the show? No. Couldn't do that. We can use a fake name. Nah, they'd recognize my voice. You want to disguise your voice? I mean, it becomes this thing you were talking about, Seth, where people just, they're so happy that we're able to do what we're doing because they can't. And that is growing and growing and growing. And I feel like it's sort of this balloon that eventually is going to pop. And this huge, like, that's why I love what Openly Secular is doing, just slowly encouraging people, tell one person today. Just come out to one person today if you can safely. Just tell one. I think it's going to get it's going to reach critical mass at some point.
Now, Shelley, when you're doing your music, you have people who say, I heard this particular tune and I was at rock bottom and it just resonated in my bones, right?
Yeah, and that's really the most rewarding and encouraging feedback. Something I hear commonly is that, people found it hard to call themselves an atheist or use that word or that term because they had this negative connotation about it. But when they heard the idea presented in music in this really creative way and, kind of reinforcing a positive worldview associated with it, that they found it easier to accept that worldview.
What I like about you, and one thing I think that all of us try to do, and we take some heat for it, we are atheist activists, and we fit that label in many ways, but we're also about real life. Sometimes when we spin out of just atheism, non-belief, I do not believe in God, let's talk about real life. There are some people out there, I will never understand them, who are like, I didn't tune in for this. You're not talking about atheism. And I'm like, well, my non-belief, my rejection of magical thinking actually informs how I see the world. Your music doesn't just talk about non-belief. You speak to things like body issues and beauty and worth and those types of things in the lyrics of your songs.
Yeah, and exactly that. Since I've become an atheist and a skeptic and valuing critical thinking, still working towards it, but that informs the way that I see everything, and I want to keep questioning everything, and that's a big part of what I try and say in my music as well. Another really great piece of feedback I got from a couple of families was to this one song, I Don't Believe in Fairies, kind of comparing, I sang that earlier today, comparing a god or deity to these imaginary creatures, goblins and witches, and a couple of families wrote to me to say that their little kids aren't afraid of the dark anymore since they listened to that song and had that conversation.
Chills.
And that's so cool. And a couple other things that I really liked is, again, bringing that cultural element to what's traditionally like an intellectual kind of sphere. An atheist came out to one of my shows in Melbourne, and he said, "This is the first time I've gone in my life to see live music." And I thought that was so awesome. Or I'll do events with local communities around the country, and then some of my fans will come to that community event and then be connected to a community, whereas otherwise they felt alone. So it's that musical element bringing them to a place where they can have social network.
When we did the Tiny Thinkers books for kids who we have out there, we don't have the kids out there, we have the books out there. Just want to be clear. Cara Santa Maria wrote the foreword for the first book, and our illustrator, Hez, drew a picture of Cara, and she's in the beginning, and he's got her glasses on her. You know what Cara looks like. And we didn't think anything about it. We drew how Cara looks in real life, and she talks about chasing fireflies in her backyard as a kid, and digging up dinosaur bones or digging for things in her backyard and stuff like that. And we put her little bio in there, and she talked about how Charles Darwin inspired her, and the book is about Charles Darwin. And so we didn't think anything about it, and we released it, and we're business as usual. I get a call from Andrew Seidel of FFRF, one of the attorneys there, and he's like, "I just have to share this story with you." He said, someone I work with said that her daughter, Clara, actually, was always being made fun of for wearing glasses, because she wears bifocals. And she was being made fun of at school and kind of bullied and stuff. And she's always talking about science and actually playing in her backyard, a very similar story. And what she was doing is she was going to school and taking her glasses off, struggling to see because she didn't want to be made fun of. And I think she's only 8 or 9 years old, and maybe even younger, maybe 7. And she read the foreword to Tiny Thinkers, and now that she sees that inspiration in Cara, she proudly wears her glasses and says that they actually make her smarter, and she's used that to empower herself. And I just thought that was a really sweet story. And now that parent, rather than reading bedtime stories, they read the foreword to this book to their daughter every night, just for that encouragement to be who you are and be proud of who you are.
Sarah, how are we doing with anti-Muslim sentiments in this country? I mean, and I want you to help us understand the difference between Muslim and Islamist. Help us to understand the cultural Muslim and the radical, the fundamentalist. There seems to be a very clumsy and broad use and misuse of terms. It's like they've taken a sledgehammer into the operating room when it comes to Muslim culture, Islam itself. What's your thought on the temperature right now in this country?
Well, a lot of people are really afraid. They're not happy with the rhetoric that they see. They're not happy with the way that their fellow Americans feel about them. And it's weird that this ex-Muslim is talking about how Muslims feel in this country, but I think that I can give light to that a little bit, because when I tell people that I'm an immigrant from Pakistan, they assume I'm a Muslim. They treat me like I'm a Muslim, and they start talking about God and how we all share the same gods, and they try to relate to me on that level until I say, wait, I'm an atheist, actually.
And then what happens?
And then it's always a state of shock, because they're like, oh, atheists look like you. So I think that this whole conversation about what we should label people, and Islamists are bad, and these kinds of Muslims are bad, but these kinds of Muslims are good. I think that's kind of a strange conversation to have. I'd like to focus on the ideas. This idea that men and women are not equal, this idea is wrong. And I don't care who's holding it and what they call themselves. If you're holding that idea, then you're somebody that I don't agree with. And I'd like to talk to you and change your mind on that. One thing...
Go ahead. Go.
I would... Let me ask you guys a question a little bit. So we're talking about everybody coming out, and it's so wonderful, and because I'm the ex-Muslim, I gotta bring things down a little bit and just depress us all. I have had the experience of having to tell some people that, maybe it's not the right time for you to come out. Maybe it's just not the right time in your life, and maybe you need to be a little bit more independent so you can secure your safety and, just for my peace of mind, because I don't want to tell somebody something and get them into trouble. I'm wondering if my fellow panelists here have had that experience and how they dealt with it.
I'll jump right in. That's okay. It's funny, when I first started, I was called a coward and a sellout when I would tell people, if you're not ready, don't. If you're not sure if you're ready, don't. Let me paint the picture for you. 2007, I stumbled upon a video. I'm working on probably a church video for the company I work for. And when I'm doing sort of mindless stuff, I'm doing keyframes and graphics work and shading and whatnot. And it's not storytelling, so I can listen and watch other things. And for some reason, and I don't recall the exact reason, I decided I was going to seek out some Christopher Hitchens. I'd seen him on television a few times. He intrigued me, didn't know anything about him. I pull up a debate video, and I start. Have you ever had that moment in your life where one supposedly innocuous act changed your life? I clicked play on a YouTube video. All right? He's debating Rabbi Shmuley Botiak. I'm still a believer. Yeah, I've had some shakes and some doubts and whatnot, but I'm still a Christian, professing. I'm shooting video for churches coast to coast, and I'm good at it. All right? This is my way of serving the Lord. I click that. 90 seconds later, I don't know what just hit me. It was the hitch slap. Right? And this propelled me into a journey I never asked for, I never expected. I didn't want it to happen. I didn't mean for it to happen. It just happened. Now, the months passed and I continue. He brings up somebody named Dawkins. Who the hell's Dawkins? What's that guy? He's got a book. Okay, let me get who's Dan Barker? Dan Barker's an ex-believer. He's got a book. I need to read that. Oh my God, what a great book. It's before you know it, I'm like the man who'd been in the desert, right? I'm drinking, I'm drowning. I can't get enough. I feel like I'm making up for lost time. The entire time, I'm coming to a point of critical mass where I'm coming to the point where I don't no longer believe. What's my life look like? Will they fire me from my job? I'm almost 40. That's a pretty big deal. Who's going to pay the mortgage? Right? They serve churches. What happens if the churches find out? What happens when my mother and father, who are fundamentalists, find out? And my twin sister and my other siblings and my cousins and my friends, almost all devoutly religious, find out. It is easy for somebody on the outside to throw rocks over the fence and to say you're a coward if you're not loud and proud and you're not blaring it out from the mountaintop with a bullhorn. You're not real. And I've lived it, and many of the people at this table have lived it, and we know this chess, not checkers, right? We need to maneuver ourselves as best we can to that moment where we can, hopefully we'll get to that moment where we can be loud and proud and wear the t-shirt and say it, put the pin on our lapel, or just be able to answer the question at a party. No, I'm not religious. I'm actually an atheist. We want that. But we also have to be empathetic and have the perspective to understand about the so many people who, they're just not there. They want to be there. They're desperate to be there, but they're just not there. They don't need our judgment. They need our empathy and support. And I think that's a huge thing that we may be missing in the atheist movement in many regards. I don't know, anybody want to chime in on that, or did I just stomp it to death? Did I just over-answer your question, Sarah? That's what happens.
That was perfectly done.
When you ask a radio host a specific question. Anybody else want to toss something out with a microphone? Let's try to get some people in various geographic locations within the audience. Mix it up.
Hi there. Excuse me. I'd like to challenge you on what you just said, because I believe that we've had 8 years worth of conservatism. This last campaign gave rise to the closet racist. And we just talked about, or y'all just talked about, how racism can kind of seem like the norm now. Isn't the time now for us to come out and for people to come out and stand up for themselves? Because I think it is.
Well, I think we agree whenever possible. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Matt.
No, I want as many people out as can come out, But you also have to recognize that not everybody is in a position where it's safe, where it's a good idea. And also, there's a lot of bad arguments, and there's a lot of people who are secular for, let's say, not particularly compelling reasons and aren't necessarily the best representatives. While I'd love to have everybody out, if you're going to come out and end up doing damage both to the movement, well, that's a problem. If you're doing damage to yourself and your livelihood and your family, that's a problem. I want a world where there's no need for anybody to come out and say this. I'd love to get there, and I think we know almost beyond any doubt that knowing someone who's a non-believer is probably the strongest thing that can happen to change somebody else's position. When the person in your neighborhood who you like, who you've had a beer with, or they're the one that keep their yard nice, so you bitch about the neighbor that doesn't together, and then you find out that that person is a godless heathen, and your view of godless heathen in your head is something like some baby-killing green monster that's coming to destroy America, that changes you. And so, yes, now is the time for people to come out, but still you have to do it recognizing that not everybody is financially in that position. I hear from kids all the time who are sitting here saying, I'm terrified, what should I do? Are my parents going to kick me out? I don't know. I know of parents who have kicked their kids out. I know of people who have lost their entire social network, their family, their finances.
Their college
I don't
fund.
get to make that decision for other people. The best thing I can do is encourage them, to let them know that from what we know, it's almost certainly going to be better in the long run, and to build communities that serve as landing places for people who become ostracized from all of their other social networks. And this is why, I didn't intend to do this, but Sunday Assembly, Oasis, things like that, they're not the only options out there. The Atheist Community of Austin, their local organizations, Fellowship of Free Thought, this is a get-together for people. And there are secularists who will say, oh, that's just atheist church. And there's one individual in particular who has actually written blogs saying that the people who go to Oasis and Sunday Assembly just aren't sufficiently secular. They're still in the trappings of religion. And I think that person should resign, because I don't think they should be in a position of authority dictating who is or isn't sufficiently secular just because Tom Flynn is a curmudgeon who doesn't like to celebrate things.
Right? When we get together, human beings are communal creatures.
The magic show will be fun. I will not be grumpy all evening.
Right? Community existed well before the church. The church does it amazingly well and stamps its brand of ownership upon it. But when we get together at Comic-Con, that's not church, or, well, in some ways it might be for many of you. I don't know.
It's Star Trek church.
We get together for bowling night. We have movie night. We go to a rock concert. We share common interests, chess club. I don't care. This is the human tendency to get together. You'd mentioned, I think, was it tuition, about the consequences. I just started the radio show. A guy called my show. I think the show's in archive. He's a freshman in college. Now, he depends on his mother and his father for his tuition. They're paying the tuition for him. He goes to college where minds are often expanded, and he realizes there are other viewpoints in the world, and he realizes that they may be making more sense than his parents' fundamentalism. And he says to them, I don't believe anymore, I'm an atheist. And they said to him, if you mention atheist again to us, we will pull your college tuition. Now, that's not just emotional blackmail, familial blackmail, that's financial blackmail. Holding someone's future hostage unless they line up with them or don't make waves. It's another example of why we as a culture need to continue to empathize with those who are, he's desperate to speak, but does he play the long game and wait till he gets his diploma and gets his feet on the ground and gets his first job and has a revenue stream and has opportunities, and then can, on a platform he constructed himself, ultimately constructs himself, or college helps him construct, he can then do that? A long game may not be a cowardice game. It may be a smart move.
It may just be strategic.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We've counseled kids before to do that specifically, because they'll call and say, I'm 3 months from graduation, but I'm going home for Thanksgiving. I want to tell my mom. Do you think they're going to cut your funding? Are they going to cut your school? Are they going to cut you off financially? What are you going to do without the degree? What are you going to do without that funding? Get where you need to get first, and then sit down and have a calm conversation. And reading the folks, the guys up here that are writing these, watching these videos can help you do it, but it's got to be your decision. And you've got to be comfortable with that. And to be honest with you, I do it even today in little micro versions. Something like this, I'll meet a new neighbor and they'll shake my hand. Hi, what's going on? You want to come to church with us? Oh, no, thank you. And I don't immediately say atheist. That doesn't make me a coward. That makes me strategic. Because if I immediately, right off the bat, to someone like that, say the A word, they're going to shut down. They're going to make up their mind that they know me. They know that I'm deceived by Satan and all these horrible things. If I give them a few days, if I give them 5 or 6 days, if I give them a week, if I lend them the sugar and shake their hand and help them in the yard, and then through casual conversation I say, oh, actually, no. And they ask me again to go to church, and I say, I'm an atheist. What? But you're so nice. How many of us have heard that, right? Exactly. So then that lets them know, that puts a human face on this thing and starts to help normalize it.
Dr. Ryan Cragen is a professor of sociology at the University of Tampa. He's done some great research that shows that changing someone's social circle may be one of the biggest factors in helping to increase the acceptance of nuns, non-believers, secular people, and to reduce the stigma of atheists. I played tennis with a couple. We played tennis together for well over 2 years before they realized I was an atheist. If they'd known I was an atheist, would they have taken the court with me to begin with? No. But after we hang out, we play points, we have dinner, we enjoy each other, and they see me as a 3D flesh and blood human being, and then they discover organically in conversation that I'm an atheist. Did they bolt? Yeah, but but it took them longer to do so.
And they walked away more educated about your position, of course.
So I'm walking into a grocery store a couple of nights ago, and this old black gentleman dressed very nicely passes close by, and he says, hey, man, let me share something with you. And I'm like, what's up? And he passes me this CD, and he says, bless you, man, and keeps going. And I've got a Jesus CD. And do I tell that guy, this is complete bullshit. This is all made up. There is no God. I don't even have the time for that conversation.
Probably because they thought you were the devil. I mean, look at him, people.
With arms, I'm surprised he didn't just fling it at the back of his head as he's walking off.
It's like there's so many times when you get on the phone with people, and at the end of the phone call, right? Have a blessed day. And they help you. No!
Yeah, come on. Now, look, that doesn't bother me, guys. Does that bother you guys?
It bothers me a little bit.
It bothers me because of how they sneak it in.
Well, it's like if you sneeze and someone says, bless you.
No, that doesn't bother me.
That doesn't bother me.
That doesn't bother me.
I had someone, after I sneezed, they were so weird about sounding religious. They said, curse you. Come on.
I don't believe in that either, by the way.
This is what you do. A blessing, and a lot of Christians don't realize this, what a blessing is literally, it's a magical enchantment. Right? So when they say bless you, they say, I magically enchant thee. So when people sneeze, I magically enchant thee.
All right. I will say, though, that we're talking a lot about diplomacy, but what we're really talking about is relationships and building relationships. I have no problem at all. There are people who say, hey, what do you do for a living? And you have to get pretty good at figuring out what kind of situation you're in, because they're not all the same. And there are situations where I say, oh, I lecture and debate, or I do magic shows or other things, depending on what kind of reaction I'm getting from the person. There are occasions when the first thing out of my mouth is, oh, I'm a professional godless heathen, even if I don't know what that person's views are, because I don't want to buy into any woo thing, but we're really good at predicting other people. We do it all the time. When you're walking through the shopping center and through the mall, you're not telling everybody, I'm getting ready to veer a little left, I'm getting ready to veer a little right. Everybody's reading everybody's body language all the time. When you walk into a restaurant, you can tell whether the server's having a bad day. You can tell whether this couple over here is in a real argument or pretending to have a real argument. We can spot, what is love? Well, it's this chemical thing. No, we're so good at identifying love that we can spot when a new mother isn't responding with love to her child. We get it instantly. And yet we pretend we don't. There's a lot of people who aren't very good at it, and there's a lot of people who have to work harder at it. But if you get to and actually care about other people, and get to the point where you can recognize those things, you're going to have situations where you will, for no apparent reason, feel completely comfortable saying, oh, I'm an atheist. Now, you may not be able to say you're a professional atheist because there's not that many of us, and don't start because there's not enough money for all of us.
God.
But you'll get to a point where you can say it. And you may kick yourself. It may just be, I'm going to take a risk today. Hey, this person's asked me, and you know what? The last 4 times I kind of ducked the question. Oh, I'm not religious, or whatever. This time I'm just going to say I'm an atheist because screw it. Let's see what happens. I may never see this person again. I'll use it as a test thing. We can do all of those things, and we should, and build relationships.
So I get pulled over by a rural Texas cop who's at once curious about the volume of boxes in the back of the car and also wants to know, just in casual conversation, where are you going? What's your destination? And
Wait, hold on. Were you in your giant white I'm a freaking atheist Suburban?
No, I was in my wife's car.
Oh, okay. Because there's no mistaking where you're going or who you are when you're behind
So
your
I'm
Suburban.
going to try to explain to this guy that I'm in Texas and I'm going to drive to San Diego and then Seattle and back, right? Well, so I'm trying to give him the destination. And I said, well, why would you do that? Well, I'm on a book tour. I'm an author.
Uh-oh.
And so what's in the back? Well, those are my books. So what's it about? Like, now what?
It's about 475 pages.
I've experienced that at the border, like coming over from Australia, and I know that
we don't have a border with Australia.
Very good, very good. Even in Los Angeles, and I was.
Wall is made of water.
Did China pay for it?
You can get someone having a bad day, and that can be the difference between you getting into the country or having to just cross back over. And so, I want to be out as much as I can and, promoting a secular worldview, but at the border, why are you here? I'm here for a humanist conference. You just soften it when you need. And they say, oh, what's that? I said, that's fighting for human rights. And the guy said, well, we need plenty more of that. Come right in. But if I framed it slightly differently, I might not be able to be here and do what I'm doing. So, you've got to pick your battles. Like I was saying earlier, I'll do that over the course of an hour show if I'm playing to not necessarily a friendly or atheist-friendly audience. I'll play a couple of songs at the start of my set that are just really accessible to anyone of any belief, and then people have connected to me and feel like they can relate to what I'm saying, what I'm talking about life, and then I'll put in my perspectives that might be a bit otherwise hard to take, and that's always going to go over better than if I walk up and say, like, Judaism is wrong. It's a big part is how you can present it.
Saturday before the election, I went to Vancouver to do an event with Dawkins, and when I got to the border control, they asked me, they said, so what are you doing here? I'm just coming in to do an event, a speaking event. Oh, and what? Atheism, science, philosophy, religion. I tried to spread it out because if you say a bunch of things, if you say I'm here to talk about atheism, for all they know, you're a preacher who's talking, how atheism is going to ruin the world. Oh yeah, and so I have this cover letter. But she seemed a little confused, and not so much about the atheism as to why anybody would bring you up to talk about it. And she said, so you're coming in today and you're speaking tomorrow and then you're flying back on Monday? Yes. So you're only going to be here for about 1 day or so? Yes. So you're only going to be here for about a day to speak and then you're going back? Yes, but Tuesday's the election, so I might be back next week.
Canadian customs are harsh. They let Faisal Saeed El-Mutar go by and detained me for 30 minutes.
I would have done the same.
I was thinking the same thing.
I got
he looks harmless.
Visiting Canada, got questioned for about 30 minutes, and then they went through my bags, and the guy who was searching through pulled up a Dawkins book, and he said, "What's this?" And I said, "It's a book by Richard Dawkins about science, biology." He said, "This is not allowed in Canada, this is hate speech." And I said, "What?" And he said, "Nah, just kidding, yeah."
Now,
He's like, "You gotta have some fun on the job."
Let me see a show of hands if you feel comfortable raising your hand. How many of you used to be afraid of atheists or totally misunderstand atheists? That's significant.
Can I ask one?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people tell me, that why do you even do these debates and everything? Why do you try to share all of this? Because you're not going to change anybody's mind, right? How many people used to believe in God? Bingo.
Well, let's continue. How many used to believe in God, and a debate or a discussion-esque sort of scenario helped to change or inform your viewpoint? Yes. Whatever. I'm sorry. I thought you were calling. I thought I was in trouble. It's funny. Before we came to the event, those of you who know my story, you know that I have mother and father who love their children, would walk through fire, would sacrifice their lives for their children. They are loving, wonderful, amazing, beautiful people. But I can't take a selfie with all of you and send it to them. And I will admit that, you know, I can relate to people who have felt familial consequences, and I will admit in some ways to sort of using all of you to fill the gap a little bit. Family comes in many forms. In many ways, family is the family that you choose. And certainly my blood family and I are, you know, we are what we are. But do you ever walk into a room and feel like that undercurrent of pity? You know, oh, poor Seth, if only he knew the love of Jesus. One day we hope, one day we know he'll see. You just keep praying for him. One day he's going to see the light, and we just know the Lord's, you know, I can feel it. And then when it comes time to do religious things, especially over the holidays, it becomes sort of a performance. All right, everybody, it's time to pray for the meal. Let's pray for the meal. It's time to pray. We're going to pray. They heard everybody from all the corners of the room, and we stand around. Dear Lord, bless this food. Nourish it to our bodies, and our bodies to your service. What the fuck does that mean anyway? What does it mean? How is the food any different before or after the blessing? Has the Constitution, have the ingredients, do the chemicals, does anything change about the food before or after the blessing? Yes, it gets colder. I just went off on a bunny trail. I don't know why. I'm sorry about that. I've got a microphone over here in the corner. Go ahead, please.
Okay, I just want to say I don't know who said it about challenging you when it came to being out or not. I think the people who are saying, well, you're a coward or any of that's the kind of the thing that got us in this mess in the first place in America. We need to stop generalizing and thinking everybody has the freedom to come out like some of us do. I'm pretty lucky in East Texas. I tell everybody that East Texas should come with a warning sign because it is special. So the first couple of years I was there, I was very careful, but I'm not anymore. And I teach online, and in August, we had professional development, and there was a room of about 80 middle school teachers, and they were going around saying, well, tell me one interesting fact. And it was started from the back of the room, and I was near the front. All these people talking about the missions they've been doing over the summer and just all their church stuff. So when it came to me, because I knew I wouldn't lose my job over it, I said, and the interesting fact about me is I'm an atheist. The room got silent. But most of them have known me for a few years, so I go, it's okay, I love you anyway. And they started cracking up, and that's all good. So now 80 people know that I'm an atheist, and that's that much more out there.
I want to take a moment to tell a quick story about Peggy. Peggy was one of the people I eased into a conversation with, not knowing her viewpoint, because she used to be one of Talissa's school teachers. And I had to call her for some reason. She was online, and I forgot what the situation was, but I had to call her. And I was actually in the lobby of the hotel as Lawrence Krauss had just checked in. We were about to record his audiobook in my studio, and he went up to check into his room, and I was in the lobby, and she called me. And she's like, hi, what are you up to? It's the first time I'd ever talked to her. She's like, so what are you doing? I'm in Texas, and I'm talking with a Texas school teacher that my daughter just got signed up with. So I wanted to ease. I just want to be like, well, here's my life story, and go into it, because I didn't want it to create issues for Talissa. And so I started easing into it by going, well, I produce audiobooks, and there's this guy, Lawrence Krauss, and she's like, oh, really? I'm thinking, she knows who Lawrence Krauss is. That's a bonus. And then we keep talking, and I said, yeah, Talissa has a pretty cool life, and that's why we do school online, because we go to conferences. Just a few months ago, she met Neil deGrasse Tyson. What? You met who? And flipped out, and I'm like, okay, this is getting better. And slowly but surely, I told her I was an atheist for the phone. She's like, me too. And I was like, oh my God, this is great. And now here she is.
How many mega churches do you guys have in this freaking town?
90. I'm not kidding. We have 90.
90 mega churches?
90 mega
How do you
churches
define
in the
2,000?
1,200 or above, right?
No, it's in the thousands. Any congregation that's in the thousands or has a...
So over 1,000? I thought it was 1,200.
It's over 2,000.
I'm checking with Google right now.
Yeah. When the First Baptist Church decided that their oldest church downtown wasn't big and gaudy enough, that they needed like $90 million or $100 million to do another one, that's when I did a search on how many megachurches we have in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And the number that I came up with was 90. And it's for any church with a congregation of more than 2,000 people. 2,000. The church where Christopher Hitchens debated Bill Dembski had a sanctuary of 7,500 seats. When we went to Melbourne, for the Global Atheist Conference, that was standing room only in the Melbourne Civic Center of 5,000 people. I thought that was really amazing, but a good thing I wasn't speaking there, because I would have depressed everyone when I would have said that we have 7 churches back home that are bigger than this building.
We used to do some work for a fellowship church, pretty big around here still. They were running 20,000 a weekend. They had 20,000 people. It was just a mammoth.
There's one in, because we actually live in Garland, and there's one in Rockwall right across the lake. I don't know the name of it. I'm sure somebody here does. It's a massive, Lake Point, right. Lake Point Church. It's so, like, the cops come out, stop traffic, let people out, like every Sunday. You just can't even go to that side of town on a Sunday afternoon.
Well, I'm going somewhere with this, and you guys take the journey with me and jump in whenever you'd like, okay? I understand why people love church. They have ministries that train people on how to make sure you feel welcome when you walk in, how they dress, the words they say, how to shake your hand. We have coffee. Come over here. We've got donuts. We've got a great seat for you. Do you have any questions? Look at all the stuff we have for your kids to do. If you become a regular and then you're not there, they say, we've missed you. It's so good to see you again. Is there anything we can do for you? Where are you in your life? We have a ministry suited to you that might benefit you. So now here we are with people who are realizing that if they start to read the Bible more objectively and they're going to a Christian church, realize no matter how good they're feeling with the praise and worship, they realize, wait a minute, 2 + 2 does not equal 5. We've got a problem here. There are problems with the scriptures themselves. But I don't want to lose my family. I don't want to lose that sense of belonging. What in the world are we offering to the people who are leaving the community of the church? You guys have a thought?
You sleep in on Sundays.
All right.
Well, isn't it a bit disingenuous, too? I mean, if people are being trained to be nice to you, I mean, that creeps me out. I don't know.
I understand you don't want to go and grab somebody by the shoulders. I understand that kind of thing. But I find I get frustrated with the church for that reason. I really get frustrated because, and I'm mad at myself because I produced so many videos that were promotional tools for children's ministries. To watch the lengths that churches go to reach the kids. They are creating Disneylands. They are creating these themed environments. To go in, we'd shoot video. When I was starting to have my doubts, my gut was in a knot. Well, I'm in the room with a video camera, and they're showing they've got highly produced cartoons, much greater than VeggieTales ever was. It was, they've got, it looks like Universal Studios all around them. They've made learning a lie so much fun, and they have funneled so much of their resources into it. And knowing that it's not just that the kid is being introduced to what Christianity is, and here's Islam, and here's Scientology, and here's atheism, and here's Hindus, and here's a world religions class. This is the way, the truth, and the life. This is what you think. That's when I start to really boil over.
I think one of the things that really bugs me about all this, we talked a little bit about labels kind of off the show, and atheism is an easy label, and yet there's still plenty of confusion about what individuals mean by it or what, but it only has this single position. Hey, I don't believe in God, cool, atheist. You take something like feminist. What's the feminist position on pornography? Well, it depends on which feminist you talk to. You talk to Sansara Taylor, Tasleema Nasreen, porn is the most vile thing ever, and it's abusive to women. You talk to somebody like Greta Christina, clearly a feminist, former sex worker, edits a porn magazine. The thing that there are many things that bug me about church, and it's not just about whether or not the religious claims are true, and it's not really just about whether or not they're going to pretend or have training courses on how to welcome you or how to not screw up welcoming you. Church itself is a lie. The very idea that the 5,000 people that are all part of one church are actually like-minded is a lie. Atheists have had to do no work. If you want to know what's wrong with Christianity, you can ask a Hindu. You want to know what's wrong with Hinduism, you can ask a Muslim. You can ask a Muslim or Jew what's wrong with Islam, etc. But even in the First Baptist Church of Dallas, the person on the front pew has a different understanding of God and different positions from the person in the second pew, and they both have a different position from the person who's sitting right next to that person in the second pew, but they managed to make this label and say this label is more important than who we are or any disagreements about our position, and that's how they end up with a voting block, and that's how they end up being able to say things like, I love you anyway, as if there would be something wrong with them loving you. They've created this fiction that we all go to the same church, so we're us and they're them. And when we get down to it, they're not even them. They're not unified. Now, atheists are never going to be a unified voting bloc, and I'm okay with that. All right, I'm not completely okay with it because I'd like for everybody to vote rationally, and there's only one rational thing to do. But we're not all the same, and that's okay. And when we see fights and divisions in the movement, one of the best things we need to do is never lose sight of nuance and never fall prey to hyperbole and never put the label above actual people and what we think. Pretending that we're all the same gets us nowhere, except that it's doing good things for them only because it's not being exposed enough. People aren't calling them out and saying, oh yes, you're all the same. That's how Ted Haggard's completely heterosexual now. That's why Baptists don't recognize each other in the liquor store. That's why my wife and I found this Christians Only Kink Swingers Club advertisement. You're all the same. Because it's only the atheists who buy the pornography and the alcohol and all the things that you say you want nothing to do with. It's a big fat lie, and they need to be called out on it at every opportunity.
David Smalley.
Yeah. So to answer your original question, what are we offering?
What are we offering?
What do we have? I think that's probably the most important, because if all we're doing is reaching into their lives, taking away everything they love about religion, that's why we're going to receive so much friction. That's why we're going to receive so much pushback. And I think that's why it's so important that when we talk about atheism, we bring along with that humanism. It's still loving your neighbor. It's still being peaceful to one another without the guilt, without a fear of hell, without thinking this is just a practice run, I'll get an eternity to make things right with Jesus. And to me, that's very, very important. I don't want to just kick down my mom's door and drag her kicking and screaming into my religion out of the one she's in. Everybody that knocks on her door to talk to her about Jesus tries to do that to her. Let me tell you why my Jesus is better than your Jesus, or why you're wrong about Jesus and my preacher's right about Jesus. And so we constantly have that friction and that pushback. And so I always like to tell people, look, everything you love about your religion, I love it too. All the loving your neighbor and helping the poor and being there for one another and forgiveness and grace, those are part of my life too. I love those things. The things I don't like about your religion are probably things you don't realize are a part of your religion. So let me show you, if you could strip away everything you dislike about your Bible, everything you dislike about your church, and just carry with you that good stuff of human beings helping human beings and loving one another, that's what humanism is. You're gaining something. You're not losing religion. You're really just losing. You're not losing that human connection. You're gaining more human connection and losing the guilt and fear.
One of the exercises I was thinking about doing today, we can still try it. I just thought it'd be funny to bring it up. But Dillahunty especially, Matt is always out on the debate scene. And I literally thought, wouldn't it be funny to have him and Aaron or him and Smalley or anybody at this table and have Matt debate the other? What if it was to listen to Matt debate as a Christian? Right? If he sat in the chair and someone was talking to him and asking him to defend his faith, how would Matt Dillahunty do that? Because he's heard the argument presented to him so many times.
We tried an experiment like this once.
I won't do that, and I'll tell you why.
Ooh. Somebody will soundbite it and put it on YouTube? Or?
Well, I've given up on being soundbite out of context. I only ever took one debate class in my life, and it was in junior high school. And I was assigned to debate abortion, and I was supposed to debate the pro-choice side. And my parents and I went to the teacher and said, he can't do this, he's a fundamentalist Christian, he's opposed to abortion, and if he were to convince a young woman that it was okay to have abortion, we think that would be sinful, and we're not going to engage on this. And they offered me euthanasia instead. But I thought, I didn't know.
Wait.
What kind of school was it?
No. I see a huge misunderstanding going on here.
They offered me the opportunity to debate euthanasia. What makes this worse is I didn't know what the hell euthanasia was, and I thought that the topic was youth in Asia. And I was like, yeah, I think there should be euthanasia, so I'm happy to do that. But for much the same reason that I bowed out of that, it's not just about the sound bites, although that's potential. I would be terrified that I might be good enough at it.
You could make the argument convincing, right?
But it's so the thing about debates. It's not about who has the best facts. It's not about who has the best argument. Ideally, that's what it should be, and that's kind of what I'm striving for. I want debates to stop being the joint press conferences, to borrow a phrase from West Wing, and to actually be conversations, because then you get to see people think, and you get to see, does this person understand what they're talking about, or are they just regurgitating something? Is this another apologist clone? I want debates to be more like that, but I have this fear that my wife, is she in here? She went upstairs for a minute. I don't know if she's back down yet. She complains because I'm never not in debate mode. Aaron, who I love like a brother and who performed my wedding, he and I have had debates where I slip into pedantic debate motor dude, and it's occasionally made things a little strained. So I will bow out of that opportunity. And also, I'm developing a cold and have a magic show to do, and it would just be too stressful today. So,
it speaks to the style over substance point, does it not? How many times have you seen on stage where someone said they absolutely won, and you go, but their facts are all wrong? No, but they won. I feel this way about Mike Pence when he was doing the vice presidential debate. He was actually smoother, and he had a better style. He presented better, and people said, that guy kicked ass. And you're like, but on point of fact, he was wrong here, and he was wrong here, and he won. He totally won. Because it was more about
I think Hitchens
style.
lost a debate against William Lane Craig, only because he refused to really debate the topic at hand. He went with his shtick, and it was entertaining, and it was edifying, and I agreed with him, and I was like, woo, but William Lane Craig is a collegiate 4-points debater. That's his style. He's going to get up at the beginning. He's never going to debate me, by the way, so I can talk shit about him all I want. He's flatly said this, because I don't have a terminal degree in the relevant fields. And I don't know how he determined that before we discussed what the topic was going to be, because if the topic is secular humanism, then there is no terminal degree, and any secular humanist organization on the planet would give me an honorary one to debate his punk ass. But, well, if you're going to act like a punk ass, I'm going to call you out, because what's ironic is he debates people like Sean Carroll, who do have terminal degrees, gets his ass handed to him in an embarrassing fashion. But when it comes to debates, there are people who look at it, there's some people who look at it like it's a WWE event. And they're going to come cheering for their side to see the other side demolished. There are others who are going to look at it like it's an intellectual, academic exercise for points, and both of those people can go screw themselves. My only reason for doing debates is to get the conversation out there and to see how people think about things and encourage people to investigate and explore things in ways they hadn't. If you leave a debate that I've done with your faith in Jesus strengthened, I will, of course, be mildly disappointed, but I will be happy that you came and listened and tried to evaluate it. That's enough. I think that's the way to get people out, right? You know, we talk about diplomats and firebrands. Who among us isn't both at any given time, or either at any given time? You can't oversimplify things. We're back to missing the nuance.
I want to mention that just late last night, I got an invitation to debate the fact of evolution at a Muslim conference. An entirely Muslim audience, a large Muslim audience in Houston, Texas on Christmas Eve, just to make it that much weirder. And you know, I don't want to just preach to the crowd. I want to get a message out to the other side, right? And so I see this as a wonderful opportunity, not just to address these people with that argument, but to be able to go in and present a rational case at their invitation. Also gives the finger to the thugs outside who bring their assault rifles so they can intimidate anybody going into a mosque for a conference. Have you seen this? Mm-hmm. There was a Muslim convention in Garland, Texas, my neighborhood, and there was a whole bunch of people showed up with assault rifles, rednecks, just trying to intimidate anybody that goes into the mosque to show their bigotry against Muslims. Right?
Well,
so
wasn't
I'm
that in
against
response, though, to the shooting in Garland? There was a Muslim...
It wasn't a response. That was the same event.
Oh.
No, I'm sorry.
No, because the guys...
You're talking about the one where it was supposedly ISIS.
Right. There was an attack from an extreme Muslim group, and then they were killed.
Yeah, it was the same location.
Armed, no. Right, and then when they tried to have another event there, a bunch of armed people showed up.
Now, how much of that is fear? How much of that is terrorists? How much is that they're coming here because they want to wreak terror and they want to have jihad and they want to take us over and they want to conquer the infidel? There are these conversations that are taking place. I mean, they're building a mosque 2 miles from my house in Oklahoma. The conversations are, they want jihad. How much of that is based in misinformation? How much of, hey, we want Islam to dominate the world is legit? I don't know. Maybe I should start.
I think it's all fear. Fear is born of ignorance. Fear is born of ignorance. I think it's all fear. I think it's based on ignorance. I think it's based on misinformation that spurs on fears.
And it's the willful ignorance.
Now, but Islam is a different animal in the 21st century than Christianity is, right? We're looking at a religion that has not yet had its enlightenment.
Well,
Sarah Hayter.
I think that's...
Nice and close to the mic for me, I'm sorry.
Sorry, is there never such a thing as a rational fear? Is it always misinformation? Because I think there are times where you can be rationally afraid of something, where you can judge something to be a true threat to you, or to the things you hold dear, or to your values. And I think we have to understand that too. And we can't just dismiss that fear as you're just ignorant about things. Because there are people who will read the Quran, and then they'll come to me, and then they'll be afraid. And they'll say, I read this. Help me out. Help me work through these feelings. Now I'm afraid. I wasn't before. But now that I read this, and now that I find out that Muslims look at this literally, I'm afraid now. Right? So my way of working, helping them go through those fears is saying, hey, these are rational people. These are people whose minds can be changed. And so long as that is true, so long as we can change their minds and we can talk to them, then we don't have anything to be afraid of. But to that main point, is there never such a thing as...
I was wrong, you've changed my mind. I fell prey to the same hyperbole I was cautioning everybody else about.
And a salient point that I'd like Sarah to speak to, and anybody else at the table who'd like to jump in, when, especially in the political climate, we talk about the Muslims, as if they're all one thing that act and worship and do things the same way, ignoring the fact that radicalism and fundamentalism and these sort of theocratic Islamist governments, who are the people most oppressed by those governments and by those institutions and entities? It's Muslims themselves. Who's scrambling to find asylum, to escape? Who's under the boot of radicalism? Quite often when people are speaking, Sarah, right, about the Muslims do this, the Muslims do that, they don't realize that many of the people who are scrambling to try to find sanctuary, safety for themselves, their children, are Muslims themselves, yes?
Absolutely. And I think that, just like with Christians, a lot of them don't understand the way that their religion is impacting their lives. They don't understand that this inequality that they're saying between men and women has a lot to do with the religion. And maybe there's another way about it. And we can go forward in that way if we look at secularism as an option. So a lot of them, actually, they don't know the way the religion impacts their lives. A lot of people tell me that Christians haven't read the Bible often. There's a lot of that, and that happens with Islam as well. A lot of them don't really know exactly what they believe in. And sometimes when you just talk about it, that's a step in the right direction.
Now, is that like Christianity? Like, I know Jesus is real, but I've never read my Bible? I mean, is there a lot of that where I pray 5 times a day, all is great, but I don't really know the basic tenets of my religion? Is there a lot of that?
With some people, yeah, absolutely. We were talking about diversity. So some Muslims are absolutely that way, where they have never read it, and they just sort of follow what they're supposed to be doing, and they don't really have any idea of what this all means in context. And then there's those who really do know their business. So it's varied.
Why is it whenever I have, and this happens in waves, and you guys as activists can tell me if you've ever had like a sudden flood over a period of days or maybe a week of Islamists who appear on your page, and maybe you've done an anti-Islam video, or maybe someone posted my logo in some Islamist publication somewhere by accident. They were talking about somebody else and they just Googled atheist and my logo came up and they put it up there. So before you know it, I have all these people and they start commenting. But the way that they were commenting was bizarre. It was like these weird Islamic bumper stickers. God is great, Allah, Quran proves physics. It was these sort of weird punctuation marks. They weren't talking to us. They were like, it was like a cut and paste kind of thing. Can you speak to what's going on?
This happens to all my videos. Every single one of them that somehow it gets found out by some forum somewhere that'll get a link, I think. This is what happens. And then I'll get a surge of people that are saying all sorts of things. And this is a part of the world that doesn't have a history of rational thinking in the way that we have been exposed to it in the West since the Enlightenment. It's just not an open society yet, right? So these people are, they're learning about some of these ideas for the first time. And the first time you hear about something, you're a little bit in shock, and it takes some time to sink in. So we are encountering people who are very, very, very new at this. And sometimes it just takes a while.
But how much of this is a product of training, Sarah? I mean, is it like they give them the language, they teach them the rebuttal, they give them the word, they just parrot it the rest of their lives? Is there some of that that's driven into it?
I parroted a lot until one day I started thinking about it. There was a good amount of time where I just said whatever I was taught, which was one of the things that I talk about that I was sure was real, was that Islam gave women rights that no other religion has ever given women, and it's such a beautiful religion for women in particular. And I parroted this. For a long time I parroted this, and I'm not sure why. It came naturally. It came as a defense of, I thought I was protecting my people, until one day I thought about it. And my story was that I was reading a lot, I was looking into philosophy, I was looking into morality, but also I encountered this really annoying militant atheist. And he had a printout. He was my friend, but an annoying friend. He had a printout of all these verses from the Quran, and he said, "Look at this. This is what you believe in." And I looked at it, I was like, I don't believe in this. What is this? And I had never really seen those written out in that way and spelled out. And Then I started to do some research. And then, 2 months later, I'm an atheist. So.
You guys seen that video of the guy on the street who was reading these offensive Quranic verses to Christians who are aghast at it? I can't believe it. It's horrifying. It's terrible. Oh, actually, that's the Christian Bible. Oh. It's beautiful.
I thought of the exact same thing. It's one of my favorite. I was about to say literally what you just said.
It's amazing how when you go back to visit those passages as like a critical thinker, when you're on the other side of that.
How did I ever expect this or accept it?
And how, the story of Abraham, I remember learning about that as a little kid in school, and it's like, Abraham is a hero. He would be prepared to do anything for God. He was prepared to kill his own son. You're like, what a great guy. And you look back at it later, you're like, how could everyone in that room be part of that and accept that? And yeah, especially so much of my religious education was a lot of rote learning, and you're learning songs and they rhyme, and you're learning melodies, and you're learning these prayers, and there's just this rote element to it, so that you are able to parrot it back. I could still probably pray for 20 minutes, So I think.
So I wasn't Jewish. So let me ask you: did they talk about the David collecting the foreskins, or because that seemed to be skipped over? But I had more Bible than you did, so did they spend more time on that?
No, I haven't. That wasn't part of our Jewish primary school education.
Convenient.
We actually did have a listener write into the show one time, because I always bring up 1 Samuel 15:3, wiping out the Amalekites. It's one of my go-to verses when discussing the problem of evil, divine hiddenness. And she actually wrote in and said, in school, we would write Amalek on our shoes, and the class would walk around stomping to stamp out Amalek, to stomp out all of the Amalekites. And these kids did this. These were 10, 11-year-old kids. It was thought that they were horrible and evil, and so it was a fun exercise for these children to stomp around after writing Amalek.
I always loved that they were supposed to obliterate the Amalekites from living memory, and then they wrote how they did that.
I think his name is Brendan Powell Smith. Have you guys heard of the Brick Testament or the Brick Bible? I'm preparing a speech that I'm going to be giving in Los Angeles in January, and we're talking about how that Bible stories in one context are sacred and amazing, and they touch the heart. But when you put them in another context and show them literally, but you just show them in a different way, they look like the most bizarre, ridiculous thing. Well, the Brick Bible takes the Old and New Testament of the Christian Bible, and it reenacts in incredible detail Bible stories using Lego figures. And they reenact the procuring of penis tips, right, of foreskins by David, and delivering that as a dowry to King Saul in Legos, in photographs. And if you have never seen a Lego foreskin, you have not lived. Google the Brick Bible. Send it to your Christian friends. They'll love it.
I was giving a presentation at Imagine No Religion, and I was talking about this, and I said, I wonder what a bag of foreskins would look like. And I put on a PowerPoint a big old bag of pork rinds.
No.
Speaking of foreskins.
Are we out of time yet? Can we be done? Can we be done?
Have you, one more foreskin story. Have you guys heard about the holy precipice and this kind of theological train of thought? So Jesus is the Son of God, and he is incredibly holy, but he was Jewish, so he was circumcised at birth. And so, basically the question is, what happened to Jesus' holy foreskin? Did it ascend to heaven at the same time that he did? Did it go up first? There was one theologian who suggested that it became Saturn's rings. And then there were certain churches in Italy that claimed that they actually had the precipice, and they kept it in this box, and they would parade it through the streets, once a year, the celebration of the Holy Precipice.
That's
Check
not creepy.
And if Jesus came back, they would give him a content warning about what was in the box, just in case it was troubling.
All right, let's grab a listener. Where's my roving microphone? All right, hit it.
I wanted to go back just a bit to what can we do, like what can we do that churches do so well?
Or otherwise,
and one of the things, especially for the kids, full disclosure, I am the program director for Camp Quest, Texas, is that we can offer programs, and we can offer programs locally. I want to say everyone should come to the Fellowship of Free Thought, but I know that a lot of you guys are from all over. I actually had a chance to talk today with a couple that were from Chicago, and they're like, we want to go to FOF, but where's FOF Chicago? And so I got on Meetup and found some things that they could go to. But it's something that we can all do locally, because even FOF, we have well over 1,500 people involved in FOF right now, but these guys started with like 8 people in a living room. And, 7 years ago, we never thought that we could be anything like this. And so it touched me a lot. Not in a bad way, but it touched me. I was driving down I-35 and going through a really rough time when I first moved to Dallas. I was actually thinking about going to a church just for that community. And I'm like, I can deal with the 5% of the Jesus bit because I could get the 95% of the social bit, because I've got to make friends, because I'm kind of sinking in this hole of not having social interaction as an atheist. And I drove past a bulletin board that said, "Don't believe in God, you're not alone." And I think that is the most powerful message that we can put out there as atheists, because even if you only reveal yourself to one person, if you just come out to one person, it might be that person who feels alone. And I just wanted to share that.
If you are ever browsing the archive of the Thinking Atheist, a lot of the older shows, the sound quality is not great. We were working with Blog Talk Radio as they were sort of going through some growing pains. But I did a show called You're Not Alone and You're Not Crazy. And if you know someone who's going through that moment where they feel isolated and everybody's pointing a finger and they're being ostracized and they're unsure and they're a bit desperate to reconnect, grab that link, blogtalkradio.com, or just go to thethinkingatheist.com, and the show's called You're Not Alone and You're Not Crazy. That show is really designed to help encourage people.
One other resource that's really fantastic is Recovering from Religion's hotline. They actually got a podcast-a-thon or broadcast-a-thon tomorrow. That's happening. The hotline is available as a peer-to-peer support network. You can call in, or they have a chat line now as well. And if you're, just want to have a discussion with anything to do with religion,
they also I'm sorry, I don't mean to step on your words. I just wanted to throw in that they also have connections to secular therapists.
Yeah. So they offer a lot of resources. They'll put you in touch with, with the secular directory, so you can find local groups or secular therapists that can help you, and just reading materials depending on what you're interested in talking about. And they're not pushing an agenda. They're just there to listen, and I think that's what's really special about them. They're not trying to convert anyone. They just want to meet people where they're at and provide that support. And there's so many people, like you said, that just feel alone and don't have anyone to talk to about it. They can't talk to their families because then they're going to be in the situation that we were talking about before. And so, it's really fantastic. And if you can recommend them or help out, they need more hotline agents. That's something that directly that you could do. You could be a peer support person for someone who is struggling and needs someone to talk to about what they're going through. So,
quickly, let me see if I can get one more. Where's my roving microphone? Over here.
Hi. I actually have a bit of a story that occurred actually just yesterday for me on the topic of coming out as atheists. I fortunately have a very accepting family. They're Christian, but they accept the fact that I'm atheist. But just yesterday, I was talking to one of my teachers at college about how I was recently diagnosed with medical depression and have started on medication for it, and it has impacted some of my studies. I was talking to one of my teachers on how to, go back and do some remedial work for it, and she ended up essentially, she brought up religion, and I mentioned that I was an atheist. Somewhat concerned about my grades for that, but she brought it up, and essentially, right there, she started trying to convert me to Christianity and was rather persistent about it. Don't know the full outcome of if that's going to impact my grades at all, but the ironic part was that this is actually my ethics teacher.
Oh my God.
That tried to do this. So she tried to convert a student while I was talking to her about grades and knowing that I was in an emotionally vulnerable situation. So.
Well, now this is what religion does, right?
Yep. It
We
seems to target
have
people at very
depression
emotionally
programs. We have divorce recovery programs. We want the vulnerable. We have a place, and many times it's done not in a duplicitous way, but because they genuinely do want to help. And I think that's a distinction we need to make. I get so sick and tired of everything that Christianity does is horrible. Sorry. Christianity, Christian churches, Christian human beings put themselves often in harm's way to go out and help other people. They often care about the sick and the hurting, and this is how they have been trained in many ways, or the only way that they know to try to I mean, it's in your case, a huge inappropriate crossing of boundaries. Were you in a class in front of others, or was it one-on-one?
It was one-on-one.
Okay, well, that's good. But it's still a tremendous crossing of boundaries. And of course, anytime, has anyone known anyone who suffers from depression, and the minute they realize you're an atheist, they automatically assign the two? Well, no wonder you're depressed. You don't believe in my God. That's a challenge. Have you addressed that with anybody? I'm not sure. Is there any recourse for somebody? Is that seems a huge...
You said college, right?
Yeah, I am in college, yeah.
It's a public school, or is it a privately funded, like states?
It's up at University of North Texas, so public college.
What's that sound mean, everybody? Is it a... Okay, all right. Well, thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah.
Anybody want to speak to that? More than anything else, I think my first concern would be that you are, and it sounds like medication being part of your solution, it sounds to me as well that you're pursuing evidence-based treatment, evidence-based solutions to your problem. And as long as you're surrounded by those who support you and you are following that path, I think that's a great first step. So thank you for sharing your story.
FFRF.
Absolutely.
Would the Freedom from Religion Foundation have some resources on...
It wouldn't hurt to contact FFRF.org, and they will go in and just, they will be an advocate for you. And there's enough of them working so quickly and so well, I think you might be able to find out pretty quickly. Thank you for that.
Absolutely. And I've worked with FFRF before. We've asked them for help. The ex-Muslims in North America were celebrating, I think it was an anniversary party, I'm not sure, but maybe 3 years or something. And we went to a pretty large grocery store, went to their bakery section and asked them to print a cake. And all the cake said was, ex-Muslims of North America, congratulations on 3 years. And the bakery refused to do it. They called us and they said, this is offensive, and we can't do this. And that's all it was. It was ex-Muslims in North America, the organization's name, and congratulations on 3 years. And so we contacted FFRF, and they helped us out. They wrote a letter and they sent it straight, and that letter went straight to the CEO of the chain, and they handled it very quickly. So that was a really good experience, and I recommend them for if you have a question about the legality of something.
Who knew that cake decorators had so much political
Right? I mean, there's a lot of politics.
And I wonder, the first person who objected, were they a Muslim?
Well, I
or was
think,
this a Christian who saw the word Muslim and didn't read anything else on the cake and just ran?
I think this was it was a combination of the two. I'm not sure. Their official story is just that there were some Muslim workers there who were made uncomfortable by our name,
By letters and icing.
It was a trigger cake. That's what it was. Yeah. One more from the audience, and then I want to focus on my panel quickly. Where's my roving microphone?
Right in the middle.
Yeah, my question is about funding. So to enact change, create scholarships for students who lose funding from their parents, to put up these billboards, what are some thoughts and strategies about how we can better fund programming to bring about change?
You want to jump in, Smalley?
Yeah, so you said, you could give him back the mic for a second. I want to get some clarification. You said fund programming specifically for bringing about change.
Yeah. Funding for, putting up billboards, creating scholarships for students who.
Okay, so you're talking more about marketing as opposed to individual situations. I was going to jump in because of the work we've done as far as raising money for individual kids, the I Am Fourth Fund that we keep in case someone gets kicked out or has their funding pulled. We try to help with that, raise money, and of course, the secular community, every time this happens, always rallies around. The person goes on 2 or 3 shows, their GoFundMe explodes, and they get taken care of. That's what I'm most proud of about all of you as a secular community. But I think what you're talking about is really important to tie in what Jamie was talking about as far as that billboard was the first thing that really got her attention and made her feel like she was okay. Maybe we should be targeting a younger demographic there. You know what I mean?
I want
Maybe
to speak, I think, to a larger umbrella, too, while we're on the subject of money. Was it Matt, whoever brought it up, who was it who said, when you get together, you're just having atheist church? You guys have heard this? How many times have heard when you are being asked for money, they're like, oh, you're just passing the plate.
Yeah.
This is the atheist offering. I'm not acting religious anymore. Therefore, I don't do that. And I think to myself, why in the world are we weird about money? The multi-billion-dollar religious marketing machine is out there going after the hearts and minds of the planet. And we think we're going to do a grassroots thing on the corner. We're going to hold up our placards and our little handmade signs on a shoestring, and we'll be able to compete. I'm not saying we beat them with polish, but we should be in the excellence business whenever possible. And so if someone doesn't understand that, yes, billboards cost money. Yes, to hire people to be part of an organization to do quality work costs money. Yes, to buy sound equipment so that Dogma Debate or whoever is able to do these touring shows and to create these opportunities costs money. We have to see this as an investment in the conversations that are taking place. Not, oh, I'm tithing, oh, they just want my money. Quite frankly, if you don't believe in it, don't give to it. If you don't believe in it, don't write the check, don't give them the credit card, don't be a Patreon supporter, don't buy the mug, don't buy the book, don't do any of it. But if you feel like they're out there swinging for the fences, making a difference, why in the world would we not rally together to try to empower and create the atmosphere of excellence? And some of those conversations involve money. Do we have to be able to fund the bullhorn that counters the steamroller of religious marketing out there? And we're going to have to become a little less weird, I think, on the subject that is a very touchy subject for many people. I don't know, anybody have anything to add about that?
Well, I certainly want to add something.
Checks payable to Save the Dillahunty and Family Foundation, something like that.
I was one of the first atheists to go full pro on Patreon, and the way that I did my first Patreon video to tell people that I was now on Patreon was I was showing this mega church behind me, and I was talking about the fact that there's 90 mega churches in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and how they all pitch in this massive amount of tithes, so that when the minister can say, I need $100 million, and his congregation puts that up, and then they violate their own charter, so to speak, when they start lobbying for political candidates and so forth, even though they're not supposed to do that. So the church wields this massive amount of financial power, of political power, and what have you got against it? It's me. Please donate to my Patreon. And people shame me for saying that I have a Patreon. When my book came out, and I said, here, my book is out on Amazon, I put a post up on Facebook, and people are shaming me because I'm just chasing the dollar, as if there's something wrong with that.
Some of those people, though, they're not going to be pleased. If you were unsuccessful, they would mock you for being unsuccessful. And if you are successful, then you're a sellout or a shill. they've essentially set you up for failure no matter how you slice it. Now, we know that the internet creates a culture of people who love to see people topple over so that they can laugh and mock and whatnot. Those people don't interest me. I don't consider them a productive part of the conversations. Quite frankly, they're just occasionally the gnat that you have to stop and swat, only if you have to, because we have bigger ideas that we want to talk about. But when you go to church and they pass the plate, 10% of your household income, what do they promise you? We've all heard the sermons where they say, well, so-and-so gave and he couldn't even afford it. And 3 months later, he got a check in the mail for exactly the amount of the money that he owed on a debt. Who tell me that's, well, they're promising an intangible or blessings in heaven. One day a jewel in your crown. What a great deal for them. 10%. You know what you get when you put down money for a Shelley Siegel CD? You get a Shelley Siegel CD. You know what you get. You're happy to get it. And there's no bait and switch. There's no false promises. It is what it is, what it is. You know, we're not lying to people by doing what we do for a living. They are helping us to continue to do what we do with full focus, full time. And I think that has merit out there.
And if I could just throw this other thing out, is I don't do this to make money. I do this because I want to evoke change. And I find that the more that I do, the more that I can do, the more people empower me to do, and the more that I do. So everybody that wants to be supportive, patreon.com/RNRA.
I wanted to take a second. Anybody else want to jump in? I don't want to trample on you.
I was just going to say that after I lost my tech job, and I've been doing the atheist, I'm still volunteer with the Atheist Experience. There's no money in that. Nobody gets paid. But people came and said, "Oh, you should just be a full-time atheist," and I was like, "Oh, I just bought a house. I'd like to make the mortgage payment." You know, what makes you think this? Aaron kind of came down to the house for his anniversary, actually, and kicked me in the ass and was like, "Hey, just do it." And the goal was to make enough money to cover the difference between what Beth makes and what we owe. And the community has been incredibly supportive. I will advertise later, but I wanted to say thanks for the people that were supporting that, and thanks for the people not just supporting with dollars, but people supporting with ideas and encouragement, the people who show up at the debates or talk to the Bible and Beer Consortium and say, "Hey, we'd really love to get Matt down," or the people who say, "Hey, here's somebody you should interview who you haven't talked to before," because all of that gets the conversation going. And the fact that I'm able to actually pay my mortgage from it is nice, but I was doing it for free before. And if it dries up, I'll do it for free after, because this shit's important.
Knowing your passion and your skill set, would I rather Matt Dillahunty be at a tech job working in a cubicle or answering phones, or would I rather him be on stage having these conversations that he has better than I certainly can? I have nowhere near his debate skill. Sarah Hayter, would I rather her be doing something else, or would I rather her be able to focus her attentions into ex-Muslims of North America and the people that it helps? Aaron Ra, with Foundational Falsehoods and the book and all the things that required so much effort. David Smalley's wonderful opportunities.
He's going to Hollywood, don't
He's going to Hollywood. Would I rather Shelley Siegel be doing some other gig somewhere, or would I rather her be traveling the world making beautiful music that speaks to us on so many levels? I'd rather her be traveling the world making music that speaks to us on so many levels.
You know, I went full-time almost 4 years ago, and it wasn't by choice.
Has it been that long?
It's been that long. January will be 4 years. And I when I did it, I was absolutely terrified. I didn't know anyone that was doing it yet. Matt almost talked me out of it.
Yeah, because
we're on the phone.
The thing was about a resume.
My
resume was software, godless heathen, and if that dries up, how the hell do you go back to software?
He's like, Smalley, look, we're both in IT. You know, this shit changes fast.
No, I'm trying to picture the boss who decides to Google search your name,
well,
right? The background check.
This happened to me. Yeah,
me too.
I had a six-figure income, and I was on point. My contract was ending, and I was moving in to another one, and it was going to be a very nice deal. Work from home 100% of the time. It was going to be beautiful, and I had the offer letter. It was all done. And we're at an Olive Garden one night with the family having dinner, and I get a phone call. It was a Saturday night at like 8:30. And And I get a phone call from the recruiter who says, unfortunately, we're having to rescind our offer letter. Upon further research, we have learned that your values are not aligned with our company. And when the phone call ended, I'd been a contractor on and off for like 6 years. Anybody who's done contract work, you know how when that contract comes to an end, your full-time job is to find a job. It's terrifying. You go into the interviews desperate. You're scared to death. And then when you get that job, you're constantly on the chopping block because you're not an employee. You're an expense that they can just knock off the books by saying, don't come back tomorrow. So it's a terrifying way to live. And I sat there trembling, talking to Brandy, going, should we just kind of move forward with the whole dogma debate thing? What do you think? And, she blessed it, and we were like, screw it, let's go for it. It's going to be really, really hard to find a job. I would rather put that work into something I'm passionate about, and let's see if we can make it happen. I got all confident. We decided to move forward, and then Matt called and was like, he's like, well, he still had his job at the time. He's like, what are you going to do, Smalley, when this thing only lasts a year and a half, and then you try to go back into IT to be your mobility architect, senior architect, and the technology's already surpassed you. You can't replace that job. And I'm like, yeah,
Sorry.
You're right. So
I've never been happier to be wrong, except when I was wrong on my own behalf.
So thank you for the skepticism.
Yeah, I want to add my own bit on that too, because if anybody's seen the movie The Incredibles, right? Mr. Incredible's job, 14 years in that cubicle denying little old ladies their insurance coverage. That's where I was when I did all my videos. I mean, where I was working on everything that I was, even when I went to Australia for the Global Atheist Convention, I had to take my year of vacation, fly 2 days to Australia, there 2 days, fly 2 days back. My vacation is all gone, right? In order to go anywhere was an issue with this job. I remember when I asked my boss, I said, I need extra time off so that I can go to Ireland. Ireland? Why do you need to go to Ireland? Well, I'm supposed to share a stage with Richard Dawkins. Is he the one in the wheelchair? God. But the job became constricting. When I started this job for a number of years, I was able to do the job and do my own thing literally at the same time. Making slides, doing research, pulling the images, what I needed for my videos and all like this. I was able to do both. But they changed the way that things work. And so suddenly, in the last few months that I was at that job, I could do nothing at work. I mean, I would have 2 hours of time at home between things with the kids and dinner and stuff like that. I would literally 2 hours to do what used to take me all day, every day. And so when I was able to get on Patreon and actually do stuff, I mean, I'm actually be able to be productive again. If I was still in that job, none of y'all would have heard from me for the last 3 years.
It's been 3 years, by the way, for me, not 4. I was wrong.
They're not allowed to ask you if you believe in God during an interview. But the first time that I realized doing the atheist experience might be problematic, I spent 4 out of 10 years unemployed going from tech job to tech job. And I know we experienced the same feelings.
Gotcha.
But I was doing an interview for a God. I didn't get that job either, and nobody should. I was doing an interview for a job, and the guy behind the desk who had a footprints thing and a picture of him with President Bush, or a signed signed picture from Bush. He looked at me and he said, "So, what's the last book you read?" Standard interview question, despite the fact that I had been reading a bunch of godless stuff. I had read other things, so I had an answer prepared, and I'm good now. And then he says, "So do you feel you have a transcendent purpose for your life?" And I was like, well, technically you didn't just ask me if I believed in God. So I explained that I'm not completely sure I understand the question, but it seems to me that as close as I can come to a transcendent purpose is that I don't just live for myself, and I'm not just here for a paycheck. I'm here to support my family and my community and the company that I'm working for, because that betters us all. And that's about as transcendent as anything that I could actually put some stock in. And he was like, I didn't get that job either.
I'm glad you're doing what you do.
Me too.
Sarah, do you want to
I think,
jump in?
let me just summarize that a little bit. I think, can you see a little bit of the anxiety here? Because I have the same thing, which is, what am I going to do now that I'm this ex-Muslim? How am I going to get a job again? And a lot of us are in that position. So to summarize, if you enjoy the work that an activist does, a content creator, if you enjoy their work, support it a little bit, or ask your rich friends to support it a little bit, and that goes a long way, and that helps. A lot of people feel comfortable, and then they can take more risks. They can be more outspoken because they feel like they have something to fall back on.
So when you found your way out of Islam, did learning about other religions contribute to that as well?
Absolutely.
So you can then say, I'm a former Muslim because I learned about Jesus, and be honest.
And that will get you almost any job in the United States.
All right. Thank you.
I'm glad you do what you do, Sarah,
Definitely.
for ex-Muslims of North America and behind the podium and just talking and relating to people and encouraging them all across the United States and beyond. I'm glad you do what you do. Matt Dillahunty, you are in many ways, I think, almost irreplaceable. I know you probably won't accept the compliment because whatever, but he's a brother. He is one of those guys who inspires me, as does Aaron and his tremendous work. Thank you for doing what you do. David Smalley is bringing broadcasting in this amazing way to so many people, and we're seeing the doors open for him, and I think we're busting a button with pride and excitement on your behalf. Shelley, you have a talent that I don't even sing in the shower. I'm horrible. Your voice is beautiful and angelic. Your talents are so rich, and thank you for sharing those with us. I want to take you back in time as we get set to close, and when we're done here, if you would you guys be okay if we all took a big photo together to mark the occasion? I'm going to ask our speakers, we're all going to stand, we're going to move the table back, and I'm going to have the speakers pose. I would like to get all the speakers, since they're here together to mark show number 300, I'd like to get a photograph with them, photograph with the crowd, and we'll all do selfies. Y'all tag everybody, everybody tag everybody, okay? And let's just show.
Hold on. Thank you, Seth, for doing what you're doing. Seriously. For being so bold, for being a leader, for being a pioneer, thank you. Seriously.
I had this big joke planned at your expense where I was going to congratulate you on your 300th episode, which is roughly the equivalent of reaching puberty for somebody who's done 1,000 shows.
Yeah, no kidding.
There you go. Ego evened out.
So I got the joke in. We met at the Oklahoma Free Thought Convention on the day you essentially outed yourself.
Yeah.
And I didn't know squat about Seth. Yeah, I'd heard about the podcast, but I don't really listen to podcasts. I don't even listen to my wife's podcast when she got the best podcast in Austin. It was kind of like you meet people at a convention and you're like, oh yeah, he's like me, or I want to know this person, and then you go your separate ways and you might meet up at another convention. That didn't happen. Seth became one of the people that I respect the most, and a very good friend. And by the way, and I don't mean to diminish Aaron at all, but I think it's fair to say that as far as the Unholy Trinity was concerned, both here and in Australia, Seth did the bulk of all the work, and I showed up to just talk. And while I may have made it to Australia someday on my own, I got there in part because of you and your work. 300 is a big deal. Not because of the number, but because of the quality. The content that Seth puts out is the reason the people who are here are here. It's the reason why a podcast with its 300th episode got a whole convention of fun. And I love you, and I want to thank you for doing this. It's been a great honor.
I'm starting to get that like Barbara Walters interview lip where the quivers whenever she interviews someone, Sorry. It was back in 2004. I was an FM radio broadcaster for 92.1 KISS FM, Clear Channel's radio station. I'd worked for Christian radio before that. And it was a shrinking business. More and more computers taking over, syndication taking over. I saw legends in the business who'd been doing radio for decades of their lives, handed their pink slips. They went to sacking groceries and working 3 jobs and making a course change in their 50s, maybe even close to 60. And I didn't want to be that. I didn't want to be a casualty of the corporate radio machine. And I took this scary step where I said goodbye to radio, or I thought I did. And I need a second here.
Can you just say the radio station's name again? Because
92.1 KISS FM.
It's
more music for the workday. 15 minutes of music every single hour. Don't forget to be listening tomorrow morning to Mark and Mike and Mandy in the morning at 7:20. We'll play the secret song of the day. When you hear that song, be caller number 107 at 460-1077. You'll win an envelope. Inside the envelope could be a key. That key could start a brand new 2017 Dodge Charger, or it might be a coupon for a Chick-fil-A sandwich.
I'm going to look for the off button.
This is why while I am a public speaker, I don't claim it because nobody can sound like that. It's
back to my story, if I may. I left that day thinking I had said goodbye to broadcasting in this way forever, to be a video producer, another kind of storyteller. And I remember turning my key in and the key card, and I thought, well, this is the end of that chapter. I'll never get to do this again. I'll never get to tell stories on the radio again. It's been a wonderful ride. I'm so thankful to do what I do. And all of a sudden, I realized there's this thing called internet radio. I didn't know it was a possibility. You can do radio stations, whole shows from your house. It's even possible. What's a podcast? What is that? And I began to dig and dig and dig and dig and dig, and I got a chance to do what so few people have been able to do, and that's to reacquire a dream. And not only did we start the show in 2010, but it has become bigger and more amazing. And number one. And well, we're not number one. I think we're ranked 3 or 4 out of 15,000 shows on Blog Talk Radio. But I'll take that. I just, if I may, I just want to say this. I always will, and I always want to be a good steward of the investment that you've made in this show, that you've taken it into your lives, that you have meant so much to me. Thank you for being a part of my 300 today.
Follow The Thinking Atheist on Facebook and Twitter. Watch dozens of original videos on the Thinking Atheist YouTube channel. And visit our website for resources, links, contact information, the editor's blog, and more. thethinkingatheist.com.